Hello, my name is Carol May Whittick, spiritual life coach and your host of Higher Energetic Resonance Inspirations. This week, silence and solitude. Why is it so confronting for some people to embrace silence and solitude? And yet, what is it about silence and solitude that some people crave? From Lao Tzu, silence is a source of great strength. From Aldous Huxley, the more powerful and original a mind, the more it will incline towards the religion of solitude. At the end, I offer some guidance on how to develop and appreciate your own relationship with your silence and your solitude. From Nicholas Sparks, from The Notebook. We sit silently and watch the world around us. This has taken a lifetime to learn. It seems only the old are able to sit next to one another and not say anything and still feel content. The young, brash and impatient must always break the silence. It is a waste, for silence is pure. Silence is holy. It draws people together because only those who are comfortable with each other can sit without speaking. This is the great paradox. This world is filled with hundreds of TV channels, maybe thousands of TV channels, millions of websites, social media, notifications going off continuously, and people are totally attached and dependent on technology. And as a result, their brains are in overdrive, always processing the input, never really taking time to fully integrate the level of information that they're being exposed to. So technology has shifted the way that we live and then we connect and we work, which is great because it means that we can become more autonomous about the way that we're creating our lives. But also it's created an issue. Using technology devices has become addictive for many, and it's becoming more and more difficult for people to disengage with their technology. And as a result, it's making it harder for them to think for themselves. They're always Googling the answer and they have less cognitive ability. They get that dopamine hit with the likes and the shares, that constant distraction, the beep of the notifications, new emails, new updates. And as a result, this gives you the impression that you're always being surrounded, you're always connected with something, with someone, and yet we're not really. Do we ever really take time to truly be in our own space? And I'm always curious of why people are afraid to be alone. A quote from Jean-Paul Sartre: "If you're lonely when you're alone, you're in bad company." Food for thought, right? So probably unknowingly, people are being driven by external opinions. So they've not yet developed a connection to their inner voice, their higher self, which is why they feel lost without being plugged into this techno matrix, because they feel that they have no guide. They get into a panic, they feel lost. And then unfortunately, this then makes them ripe for manipulation. Solitude and silence are empowering to the individual who truly understands the power of it, which is what the engineers of society do not want. So I can see why the idea of being alone is demonized. You're being called a loner, you're antisocial, you're rude, you're friendless. And if you're a weaker-minded, a weaker-willed person, you want to be seen as good and popular. So you will do anything to avoid being labelled those words. An interesting study that was done in the University of Virginia, I believe this is 2014, and Timothy Wilson, a psychology at that university, led a study, and he discovered that people would rather give themselves an electric shock than being alone with their thoughts. And one man even gave himself 190 electric shocks over a period of 15 minutes. That's how overwhelming the thought of just being alone is to some people. They would sooner experience physical pain. And the thing is that the people who have the best relationship with themselves, the ones who are respectful of whom they're spending their time with, but also of how they relate to others, they're the ones that know the value of peace without people. And people who haven't discovered that about themselves often then lack boundaries, are clingy even, and will tend to remain in situations that are toxic. They would sooner tolerate that than sit in that space of getting to know themselves. From Arthur Schopenhauer, from Essays and Aphorisms, a man can be himself only so long as he is alone, and if he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom, for it is only when he is alone that he is really free. And the fear of silence, many people seem to fear silence because it represents to them loneliness, isolation, awkwardness, and in some ways it can indicate emotional withdrawal, but also then there's that idea of going and being punished and being disapproved of, is to go and sit in a corner or sit in solitary confinement, and so you're on your own in silence. For many, the idea of not talking, and especially for a few hours, is completely daunting. It'd be like, well, if I'm not talking, what am I doing? And many negative connotations are loaded upon silence as well. Conspiracy of silence, being given the silent treatment. And while being given the silent treatment can be painful to people who need to connect all the time. Personally, I'm one of those people that if someone's giving me the silent treatment, it's giving me space. And I'll expand on my experience in a moment. From Elbert Hubbard, he who does not understand your silence will probably not understand your words. And Henry David Thoreau, I would rather sit on a pumpkin and have it all to myself than be crowded on a velvet cushion. So my personal take on silence and solitude is they're my favourite things. I know I'm probably a rarity, and although I use technology to work a lot, many hours a day sometimes, I know that I would not be as productive if I didn't have my moments with silence and solitude, because I need time to reset. I need time to be still. I need time to be able to hear my intuition. And even though I'm in silence, for me, the experience is not necessarily always quiet, because I'm in communication, I'm in communion with my higher intuition, my higher self, my guides. And this is when I receive the downloads of my ideas, when I figure out exactly what I need to do to go and create something new, to solve a problem. These are the moments when I get to visualize in detail the life that I'm creating and bring the sensations of that into my present so that it manifests for me. Without silence, without solitude, none of that would happen. And when I feel that I need that time to disconnect from the world and not be around people all the time, I feel in my body that I'm not contented. I start to get snappy, agitated, frustrated, because I know that I need to just reconnect with myself. And if I don't have that, I'm not the best person to be around, FYI. And because I gain so much from that, this is why I'm amazed that people fear and avoid it. But I understand it's a process, that initial step into finding silence around yourself and then embracing solitude and not feeling alone in that solitude. It takes a moment. I didn't land here at all, but I came to really appreciate the space that life created for me. From Henry Miller, Tropic of Cancer. I need to be alone. I need to ponder my shame and my despair in seclusion. I need the sunshine and the paving stones of the street without companions, without conversation, face to face with myself, with only the music of my heart for company. Silence is ever present in spirituality and spiritual practices, and people who know the power of silence will seek it out, will pay to go and be in silence, which is why Vipassana retreats are so popular. Vipassana is a Buddhist term that means to see things the way they truly are. On a silent meditation retreat, and I've never been on one, which is on my to-do list, just imagine those days of silence. Maybe I'm talking to myself now. Imagine those days of silence and how they can really reveal to you the nature of your inner mind, your own mind. And one of the things that I found people say about Vipassana is it reveals to them the way in which they're creating their own suffering. And then when they have that knowledge, that's when we're able to free ourselves from that suffering. Also, there's Mona, the secret limb of yoga. Mona refers to the practice of not speaking, deliberate silence. It's silence of outer and then inner speech. Physical Mona then transforms into inner silence, antamona. This antamona calms an overactive mind and promotes mindfulness and spiritual growth, which allows the yogi to then reach self-awareness and union with their higher self. It means your mind is free, you have more mental energy, and you're shifting your focus into that inner communication and inner self-investigation. And people practice Mona for years. I laugh because it sounds like bliss. From Virginia Woolf, from The Waves. How much better is silence, the coffee cup, the table? How much better to sit by myself like the solitary seabird that opens its wings on the stake. Let me sit here forever with bare things, this coffee cup, this knife, this fork, things in themselves, myself being myself. And there are psychological and physical and mental benefits to both silence and solitude. And I'll share some of those with you now. So, benefits of silence. And this was discovered via an animal study on mice. I'm not entirely sure about how I feel about that. Anyway, this seemed to be a relatively benign experiment where mice were placed into 2 hours of silence each day. And it was found that they developed new cells in the hippocampus, which is the region of the brain that is linked to our memory, emotions, and our ability to learn. Silence will relieve stress. So if we allow ourselves to be in silence, our brains are able to reset and be quiet. If you're not intaking and processing information and thinking, then you're able to reflect, and it gives you time to actually file away the stuff that you've learned and also just make room for new information. When I was thinking about that, it kind of gave me the idea of just moving things off my desktop into the hard drive. It boosts your creativity. And from my own experience, inspiration needs the mind to be calm and relaxed. I have rarely, if ever, I can't pull up an example, come up with a great idea in the middle of a cacophony of sound. That being said, I did used to work as a waitress, and I found that I was always able to jot down notes and song lyrics in the middle of a busy shift. But that also was because I managed to be able to cultivate silence around myself, even in the centre of noise. So there was an element of silence there in the middle of the bustle. But if in the middle of a conversation and too much noise, it's not going to go too far. You develop self-awareness, you're able to observe and assess your thoughts and feelings, and also boosting your memory. And this was a study from 2014 on patients with amnesia, and it showed that 10 minutes rest in a quiet and darkened room boosted their recall from 14 to 49%. And then just doing that on healthy participants boosted their memory recall from 10 to 30%. And with those moments of silence, when you're reducing that stress, and the stress response of the amygdala, it releases serotonin, endorphin, oxytocin, these happy hormones, and your mind becomes clearer and you're able to make better decisions. Also, positive effects on the body include reducing of blood pressure, boosting the immune system, reducing blood cortisol, promoting hormone regulation, and the prevention of arterial plaque formation. Also, silent people are good observers. Silence is a good practice to actually learn how to listen. Benefits of solitude. In solitude, you really get the opportunity to know yourself. You get to know what you really want to do. And often when people are constantly filling their diaries with engagements and ways to be with other people, it's solely because they don't realize that maybe they don't honestly really realize that where they're going and what they're doing is not really for their best good or their highest good, but that fear of being alone kind of overrides that space that being in solitude would tell you that, hang on a minute, I don't like those people or that activity, or it gives you an opportunity to really assess whether what you're doing is congruent with who you're actually trying to be. In solitude, you're able to recharge. Being alone is also showing self-compassion to yourself, so you can decrease anxiety, any depressive thoughts. Expanding on getting to know yourself, solitude cultivates courage. It empowers you to become more comfortable with who you are. It allows you to learn more about yourself and really discover what your true voice is. Again, when you're in a crowd and you tend to go along with what the majority will say, when you peel back, you can really assess whether where you're going is who you really are. Enhanced intuition is something you'll also start to notice when you're in solitude. It's because you'll start to really recognize those gut feelings. You'll learn to hear them more, and more importantly, then you'll start to trust them. And the most beautiful of all the benefits of solitude is to develop that connection to the divine, God, the universe, creation, whatever you want to call it, because then you start to sense something of the interconnectedness of everything around us. And moments of solitude are just a great opportunity to practice mindfulness and meditation, and that in itself just will open up that link that you have. So enjoy your solitude. And ways to make more of your solitude, and these are things that I do personally all the time, and I don't think anything of them, but I realize in having conversations with other people, they do represent very nerve-wracking activities. Taking yourself out for dinner. If I didn't take myself out for dinner many other times, I would probably never eat. And that's probably an over-exaggeration because obviously I cook at home, but I wouldn't experience places as much if I found eating out on my own so confronting. You can go to the movies alone. I haven't been to the movies for a while, but I used to. You can go for a walk. You can travel. And for me, the most recent long-haul trips I've taken have been on my own. And yes, it's daunting to be in a different country with a different language and a different culture on your own. At the core of it, we're all the same. There's not everyone is out to get you. And once you've done something like that once, you will never go back. And traveling with people is great, but there's just something about traveling on your own, and it opens you up to meeting people in a different way than you would do, and probably would not be open to if you were going with somebody else or a group. In your solitude, you can explore more, you can learn something new, you can journal, you can read, you can create art. There is endless things that you can do in your solitude. You are never bored. At the end of this episode is a track that you can just listen to. Obviously, it's not completely silent. If silence and solitude are things that are new for you, then it's something to work into. What you can do with that track, the music is very beautiful, is just kind of sit with it and listen to it on your own. Maybe if you can, go to somewhere that is remote. Go to a park or a field or somewhere that has a vast amount of space around you, and just take the time of the track, which I think is about 15 to 20 minutes, to see what your experience is. If you just have in your mind, I'm here on my own, in my solitude, looking for silence, seeking silence, comfortable in silence. And then when you want to really start working in silence, then create time for your silence and start small. Start with 5 to 10 minutes. And then as you find that you're able to maintain that, working upwards to greater lengths of time. And different people do different things. So you can just sit quietly, you can rest, you can choose to gaze at an object and try and connect with the energy of that object in silence. I've got lots of plants around me, so I'm always talking to my plants, but that's aside. But just gazing at the beauty of a plant in silence and just allowing that energetic communion to happen within you and just see what happens. Or engage in work that doesn't require you to see or think or express words. Maybe doing things like housekeeping or gardening or cooking or just taking a long walk out in nature without your headphones, without a podcast or an audiobook. And sometimes just listen to the silence. And I know it's difficult for most of us who live in metropolitan environments. And even if you live in the country, there is always something. You know, the wind will be blowing through the trees, there'll be animals, birds. But within those sounds, I've found that there is silence. As I said, when I was a waitress in a busy restaurant, I could find space around myself to create silence so that I could just connect and jot down an idea or a little bit of inspiration that came through. And then after that, breathe deeply and mindfully and bringing in the silence. So if you do find that your mind starts to chatter or you're feeling anxiety because, this is new for you, this is a new space for you, breathe into it. Know that you're okay. It's just you with yourself. You're just exploring that space. You're wanting to get to know the core of who you really are, and also then who surrounds your silence on the energetic and etheric level. And then when you choose to break your silence, break it with an expression of gratitude or love for yourself, that you gave yourself that space. From Hermann Hesse: we must become so alone, so utterly alone, that we withdraw into our innermost self. It is a way of bitter suffering, but then as solitude is overcome, we are no longer alone, for we find that our innermost self is the spirit, that is God, the indivisible. And suddenly we find ourselves in the midst of the world, yet undisturbed by its multiplicity. For our innermost soul, we know ourselves to be one with all being. And the final word for me is, in the midst of it all, silence is everywhere. Crave silence and seek silence. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and I'm excited to share with you also my newest offering, Higher Energetic Resonance Spiritual Life Coaching. And when you work with me on this, I'll support your awakening to truth and your innate gifts, to you aligning with your higher self and your intuition, to you ascending to your fullest expression and living your purpose. You will know that whatever you do or want to be is possible. I intend for you to be unrecognizable to yourself, and that your transformation serves as an inspiration to those around you in this changing world. So for more information about that, you can click the link in the show notes or contact me on my website, carolmaywhittick.com, carolmaywhittick.com. All the information about me is there. I'm on Facebook, Carol May Whittick. I am on Instagram, Casmic, Cazmick, and Telegram, Her Conversations and Inspirations. So enjoy this track, relax into it, and then when you're ready, enjoy your silence. Bye.